It had been 4 months since Michael passed away. But for Sarah, time felt like it had frozen. The world kept moving, neighbors waved, the mail came every morning. And the seasons began to shift, but inside her heart there was a stillness, a heavy silence that no sound could break. Every corner of the house carried a memory of him. The smell of his coffee mug still faintly lingered in the kitchen, and his jacket still hung by the door. Sarah couldn't bring herself to move it. To her, doing so would mean accepting that he wasn't coming back at 51. Sarah had never imagined she'd be alone again. Her marriage to Michael had been stable, built on companionship more than passion in the later years, but it was real, honest, and deeply comforting. Losing him to a sudden heart attack had been like losing the floor beneath her feet. For weeks, she went through the motions, thanking people for their condolences, signing paperwork, and pretending to be fine. But when the house finally emptied of visitors and sympathy cards stopped arriving, grief hit her like a second wave. Michael had a son, Ethan, from his first marriage. Sarah had met him when he was 12. Shy, quiet, artistic. Over the years, she had grown fond of him, though their bond had always been polite more than personal. Ethan was now 24, living in the city, working as a photographer for a small magazine. He called occasionally to check in, but Sarah often told him she was doing fine, not wanting to burden him with her loneliness. But the truth was, the house felt too large, too quiet, too full of echoes. One late afternoon, Sarah found herself sitting in Michael's old study, flipping through a photo album. Her fingers paused on a picture of their wedding day. Michael was laughing, his arm around her shoulders, sunlight bouncing off his gray hair. She smiled weakly, then suddenly her eyes filled with tears. The kind that came from deep inside, the kind she couldn't hold back anymore. She pressed the picture to her chest and whispered, "I don't know how to keep doing this without you." She didn't hear the knock on the front door. When it opened, Ethan's voice softly called out, "Sarah." Startled, she quickly wiped her tears, closed the album, and tried to compose herself. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling between surprise and relief. He stood in the doorway holding a small overnight bag. "I called 3 times," he said gently. "You didn't answer. I got worried, so I came." Sarah forced a small smile. "I was just resting. I didn't hear the phone." Ethan stepped closer, studying her face. She looked pale, tired, her eyes red from crying. He hesitated before saying softly, "You don't have to pretend with me. I know this isn't easy." Something about the kindness in his voice broke her last line of defense. Tears welled up again, and before she could stop herself, she began to cry. Ethan didn't say anything. He simply placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture, yet it carried so much warmth that it made her sob harder. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them filled with shared sadness. Then Ethan said quietly, "I'm staying here for a few days, okay? You shouldn't be alone right now." Sarah wanted to protest, but the truth was, his presence brought a strange comfort. She nodded weakly. "All right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The next few days, Ethan took small steps to bring life back into the house. He opened the windows to let the air in, cooked simple meals, and even fixed the broken porch light Michael had meant to replace months ago. Sarah watched him quietly, sometimes joining him in conversation, sometimes just sitting nearby while he worked. It was strange. She had always seen him as Michael's son, but now she saw more than that. She saw a man trying his best to help, even though he was hurting too. One evening, they had dinner together. The rain tapped gently on the kitchen windows, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah laughed, genuinely laughed at one of Ethan's stories about his photography job. "You're just like your father," she said, smiling. "You have that same charm that makes people feel comfortable." Ethan looked down, smiling shyly. "Dad used to say that too. I miss him every day." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the air between them grew still. Sarah felt something unspoken, not attraction, but connection. The kind that forms between two people who have shared the same loss. She quickly looked away, feeling her heart twist with guilt and longing. After dinner, she went upstairs and sat on her bed, thinking about how strange grief was. It could make you feel old and young at the same time. Weak one minute, strong the next. Ethan had reminded her what it felt like to be cared for, even in small ways. But the thought scared her too. She didn't want to mistake kindness for something else. That night, as she tried to sleep, she heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Then a gentle knock. "Sarah." Ethan's voice was quiet. "I couldn't sleep. Can we talk for a minute?" She hesitated, then said, "Sure, come in." Ethan sat at the edge of the chair across from her bed. He looked lost, his hands fidgeting. "I don't know how to handle this," he said. "I keep thinking I'll call Dad to tell him something. Then I remember I can't. It's like my brain refuses to accept he's gone." Sarah's chest ached, hearing that. She got up, walked over, and sat beside him. "I feel the same," she said softly. "Every morning I still expect to hear his voice. Grief doesn't go away, it just changes shape." He nodded, his eyes glistening. I didn't realize how much I'd miss him until now." Without thinking, Sarah reached out and held his hand. "You don't have to face this alone, Ethan," she whispered. They sat there for a long moment, hand in hand, the sound of rain filling the silence. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't forbidden. It was simply human to people trying to stay afloat in the same sea of loss. Over the next few days, their bond deepened quietly. Ethan began showing Sarah his photography work. He had a talent for capturing emotion in faces, especially those of older people. "I try to find stories in their eyes," he explained one afternoon. "Every wrinkle, every glance, it's like reading their past." Sarah admired his passion. Watching him work reminded her that life could still hold beauty, even after heartbreak. He offered to take her portrait one day. "You should let me photograph you," he said. "Not just for memory, but to remind yourself that you're still here, still strong." Sarah hesitated but agreed, as he adjusted the lighting in the living room and asked her to stand near the window. She felt nervous, not because of him, but because she hadn't thought of herself as beautiful in a long time. Ethan clicked a few shots, then smiled. "You look peaceful," he said. For the first time, she believed him. That night, when she looked at the photos, she didn't see a widow. She saw a woman rediscovering herself, a woman learning to live again. And though she didn't know it yet, that moment would be the start of something neither of them expected, something emotional, healing, and deeply transformative. The morning after the photo shoot, Sarah woke to the soft glow of sunlight spilling through the curtains. She had slept better than she had in months, a rare feeling after so many nights of tossing and turning. Something about Ethan's presence in the house, the way he moved quietly, spoke gently, and respected her space, had given her a sense of comfort she hadn't realized she needed. Downstairs, she found Ethan in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" he asked. His voice carried the warmth of genuine concern, not obligation. Better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the mug he handed her. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of rain still clinging to the windows. They sat together, drinking in silence, each lost in thought. For Sarah, the quiet wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful after breakfast. Ethan suggested they go through some old photographs Michael had taken. "I thought it might be nice to look at them together," he said. "You know, remember him?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, the ache in her chest tugging at her, but then she nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." They spent hours flipping through albums, talking about Michael's quirks. The jokes he used to tell, the vacations they had taken, and the little moments that seemed ordinary at the time but were precious now. Ethan laughed when Sarah recounted Michael's terrible attempts at cooking, and Sarah laughed genuinely at his own stories of teenage rebellion and his awkward first crushes. It wasn't long before Sarah realized that the house felt warmer with him around. His presence brought a sense of life back into the spaces that had seemed hollow and empty. She noticed small things she had missed before, the way he tidied without fuss, the care he took in keeping the living room organized, the soft hum he sometimes made while working on his laptop in the afternoons. Ethan worked on his photography projects, and Sarah often found herself watching him. She was fascinated by his focus, the way his hands moved over the camera, adjusting settings, checking angles, and capturing moments. It reminded her of Michael in some ways. Yet Ethan had a different energy, younger, vibrant, full of hope. One afternoon, as they sorted through photos, Sarah felt a pang of emotion she hadn't anticipated. She realized how much she had missed being close to someone who cared, someone she could confide in without judgment. She looked at Ethan, and for a fleeting second, their eyes met in a way that startled her. It was not romantic in the traditional sense, but it was charged with empathy, understanding, and a quiet admiration. She looked away quickly, feeling her heart beat a little faster than usual. Ethan noticed her hesitation, but said nothing. Instead, he suggested they take a short walk in the garden. The spring air was fresh, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. They walked side by side, not talking at first, just enjoying the quiet. Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time since Michael's passing, she felt a flicker of joy in her chest. Eventually, Ethan spoke. "I know it's hard. Losing Dad," he said gently. "I feel lost too sometimes. But being here with you, it helps. I mean, I know we can't replace him, but we can keep him in our memories together." Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening. "You're right. I've been trying to keep everything together on my own, but maybe I don't have to. Maybe it's okay to let someone in." That evening, Sarah prepared dinner for both of them. The act of cooking again, the clatter of pans, and the aroma of food brought back memories of Michael. But it also reminded her that life could continue, that it could still have warmth and love. Ethan complimented her cooking, and she smiled, feeling appreciated and seen. Over the next few days, the two of them settled into a comforting rhythm. Ethan would wake early to make coffee, Sarah would prepare breakfast, and they would sit together planning their day. They went through old letters Michael had written, sharing memories and laughter, tears and sighs. Sarah felt herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her fears, her loneliness, her worries about the future. Ethan listened, not offering solutions, just being there. And that presence, that simple act of listening, mattered more than anything else. One evening, Ethan suggested they work on a small project together, making a scrapbook of Michael's life. Sarah was hesitant at first, afraid of the grief it might bring, but eventually agreed. As they pasted photos, wrote captions, and added memories, they found themselves laughing at silly moments and pausing to reflect on tender ones. Sarah realized how much she had missed having someone to share her life with, not romantically, but emotionally. It was during these quiet moments that Sarah began noticing subtle changes in herself. She felt lighter, less burdened by grief. She noticed the way her laughter came more easily, how she could sit in silence with Ethan without feeling lonely, and how even small tasks seemed enjoyable again. She started looking forward to his presence in the house, to their conversations, to the gentle companionship that was growing between them. One rainy afternoon, as they were working on the scrapbook, Ethan paused and said softly, "Sarah, I want you to know I care about you. Not just because Dad loved you, but because you're strong, kind, and funny. You deserve happiness even now." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude, surprise, and emotion. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "That means more than I can say." They continued working, but Sarah couldn't shake the warmth from his words. She felt connected in a way she hadn't expected, a bond forged through shared grief, care, and understanding. It wasn't romantic in the conventional sense, but it was deep, meaningful, and comforting. She realized that life could still offer companionship, that love could take different forms, and that healing could come from unexpected places. That evening, after putting away the scrapbook, Ethan said, "I know we've both been through a lot, but I feel like we can help each other heal. Just by being here, by being honest with how we feel." Sarah nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes, I think I'm ready for that. To let someone in again, even slowly." They sat together, listening to the rain patter against the windows. Sarah felt something shift inside her. The grief that had once seemed unending now felt like it could coexist with hope, laughter, and connection. And though neither of them fully understood what the future held, they knew one thing for certain. They had each other, and that was enough for now. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, glinting off the steaming coffee mugs that Sarah and Ethan held in their hands. The house no longer felt empty. Even in the silence, there was life, a gentle rhythm of companionship that neither had anticipated but both welcomed. Over the past few days, their bond had grown in subtle, meaningful ways. They laughed more freely, shared memories without restraint, and found comfort in each other's presence. Sarah realized that her heart, heavy for so long, had begun to lighten. Ethan suggested a walk through the neighborhood park. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers, and the trees were beginning to show hints of spring green. As they walked side by side, neither spoke for the first few minutes. It was a comfortable silence punctuated by birdsong and the soft crunch of leaves under their feet. Sarah noticed the small gesture she had come to cherish, Ethan picking up a fallen leaf and handing it to her with a smile. The way he kept glancing back to make sure she was steady. The subtle warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. Eventually, Ethan broke the silence. "You know," he said softly, "I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately. How much he loved you and how much you were there for him. I see now why he admired you so much." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. I, I, I just did what I could," she whispered. "I loved him and I miss him every day. But I also know I have to keep living. I don't want to stay frozen in grief forever." Ethan nodded. "That's why I came. I wanted you to know you don't have to do it alone. We can remember him, honor him, and still find ways to move forward." Sarah's eyes glistened as she looked at him. She realized that what she felt wasn't romantic desire in the traditional sense. It was a deep emotional connection, trust, understanding, and a shared experience of loss that had drawn them together. In a way, it was more profound than anything she had felt in years. Back at home, they decided to continue the scrapbook project. Together, they added photos of Michael's favorite places, mementos from family trips, and letters he had written over the years. Each item sparked conversation, laughter, and sometimes tears. As they worked, Sarah found herself noticing details about Ethan that she hadn't before. The care he took with each photograph, the gentle way he handled delicate pages, the patience he showed when a photo didn't fit perfectly. She admired him not as a replacement for Michael, but as someone who brought warmth and light into a space that had felt cold and empty. One afternoon, while placing a photo of Michael on the final page of the scrapbook, Sarah paused. "It feels complete," she said softly, "like we've captured more than just memories. We've captured a piece of ourselves in this too." Ethan smiled. "I think you're right, and I hope it reminds us that life can still be meaningful, even after we lose someone we love." That evening, they sat together in the living room, the scrapbook resting between them. The soft glow of the lamp cast shadows across the room, and for a while, neither spoke. Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. She realized that grief could coexist with happiness. That loss didn't have to mean loneliness. And that connection could heal in unexpected ways. As the days passed, Sarah and Ethan settled into a new rhythm. They cooked meals together, shared stories about Michael, and even planned a small trip to a nearby town, something Michael had always wanted to do but never managed. Sarah found herself laughing freely again, feeling lighter and more present. She realized that she had been holding herself back, afraid to let anyone in. And now she understood that healing required trust, vulnerability, and openness. One rainy evening, they found themselves in the study looking through old letters Michael had written. Ethan paused on one, reading it aloud. Sarah listened, her eyes brimming with tears as she remembered Michael's voice, his humor, and his kindness. Ethan reached out and held her hand gently. "I know it hurts," he said softly, "but we can honor him by living fully, by finding joy again." Sarah nodded, squeezing his hand. "You're right," she whispered. "I don't want to be stuck in sadness forever. And having you here, it makes everything a little easier." In the weeks that followed, they continued their small routines, each day strengthening their bond. They went for walks, cooked together, worked on photography projects, and shared quiet evenings filled with conversation and laughter. Sarah noticed how much lighter she felt, how her heart had room again for hope, friendship, and trust. She realized that what she shared with Ethan wasn't just about coping with loss, it was about rediscovering life, embracing connection, and learning that love could take different forms. One evening, as they were putting away the scrapbook, Ethan looked at Sarah and said, "I know this has been hard, and we've both been through a lot, but I'm grateful for these days. Grateful for you." Sarah smiled, feeling the warmth of his words settle in her chest. "I'm grateful for you too, Ethan, more than I realized." The next morning, they went for another walk in the park. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and Sarah felt a sense of renewal she hadn't known in months. She glanced at Ethan and saw the quiet pride in his eyes, the comfort of shared experience, and the sincerity of his presence. For the first time since Michael's passing, she felt hope, not just for herself, but for the bond they had created, one built on trust, respect, and shared healing over time. Sarah and Ethan's connection deepened naturally. It was a relationship built on understanding, shared grief, and mutual support, not romantic in a conventional sense, but profoundly intimate in a human, emotional way. They encouraged each other, celebrated small victories, and provided comfort during moments of doubt. The house, once heavy with silence, now resonated with warmth, laughter, and the quiet rhythm of companionship. One late evening, they sat together by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. "Life can be unpredictable," she said softly, "but it can also be beautiful in ways we don't expect." Ethan nodded. "And sometimes the people we least expect to help us heal are the ones who end up changing everything." Sarah smiled, feeling a quiet gratitude. She realized that, through shared grief, connection, and compassion, she had rediscovered the strength to embrace life again. She wasn't replacing Michael. She was learning to live with his memory in her heart, while finding joy and trust in the present. As the night grew darker, they continued talking, sharing stories, and dreaming quietly about the future. Sarah knew that healing wasn't linear. There would be difficult days, moments of sadness, and times when the weight of grief returned. But now she understood that she didn't have to face those moments alone. She had Ethan not as a substitute for the past, but as a companion for the journey ahead. By the end of the week, Sarah felt lighter, more hopeful, and more capable of facing the days to come. The bond she shared with Ethan had become a source of strength, comfort, and resilience, a reminder that even in the aftermath of loss, human connection could bring warmth, laughter, and a renewed sense of purpose. And as she looked at the scrapbook they had completed together, Sarah realized something profound. Love didn't end with death. It transformed. It lived on in memories, in shared experiences, and in the people who stood beside you when the world felt empty, together. Sarah and Ethan had discovered that healing was possible, that companionship could restore hope, and that life, even after tragedy, could still hold beauty, warmth, and connection.